how to get to black belt. Number one, train. Okay, to repeat what Sensei Stan Schmidt of South Africa said, train, man, train. Train. The more you train, the easier it gets. Add to it that you need to do some degree of fitness. You have to work on your fitness. You have to work becoming fitter, more flexible, stronger, and you have to have a grip on your body. Sadly, I've sat in on some gradings where I've seen people who are incredibly unfit, not doing what I would call a minimum fitness level, and they're passing their grading because they've done time and they're not necessarily fit. And they get through the grading, but I think those poor people are shattered for days, if not weeks afterwards. So getting a base fitness is super important, having that up. My dad always used to say, my dad was a footballer, used to say, you have to be able to be strong on the ball. It wasn't just about your skill with the ball that made you a great footballer. It was your strength to be able to stand your position and move the football around. And that comes back to him always grinding me about being, well, you're too light, you're not, you're fast, you've got all the other skills, but you're physically not strong enough for the nature of what you're doing. And so if you watch my live streams, you'll see that I'm doing a lot of strength training instead of doing a lot of cardio, because I'm trying to get that base strength up. My dad has been in the next dimension for the last 20 odd years, and for me it's kind of like he's probably looking down at me and going, hey, I was right. And he invariably was. So strength training is super important. Now, a lot of people want to know, what does it take to become a black belt, and how quick or how fast can you do it? And it varies from style to style and art to art. In karate, as a traditional martial art, we tend to take between 3 and 10 years. 3 years is very quick, and maybe if you're training in Japan, you're training 5 days a week, 3 or 4 hours a time, you're going to get there in about 3 years. And if you're training 2 hours a week, 8 hours a month, then it might take you 10 years. You need to know where these things fit in and where they come from, so that it gives you a clear understanding that there's a different time frame based on how much you train. Okay, karate as a martial art is today worked out towards longevity. We're trying to study and train for as long as possible to improve the quality of our life. It's that thing that you do a couple of times a week for a lot of people, where you are essentially a stylist or a hobbyist, and you are training for a better way of life. You have no intentions of fighting on the street. You have no intentions of getting in the octagon and mixing it up with somebody. You have no intentions of going to war somewhere else. Some systems have got a very simplified system. 3 Ks. Kehon, Kata, Kumite. Popularized by our friends who do Shotokan, and it's quite simple. In our Goju system, a little bit more complicated for us. We tend to include things like Hojo Undo. We tend to include Randori. We sometimes include a little bit of grappling. We sometimes include a lot of Bunkai, because that is how our system is designed. And so you have to look at what system you're going to be in. Remember, grading is a snapshot of your karate to make sure you have essentially ticked all the correct boxes. Have you spent enough time training? Are you familiar and capable of doing the content? So do you know the content? And then how well do you do it? This is the double-edged question, or the two-barrel question, that is typically asked in classical karate. How well do you know the answer? Do you know all the answers? Yes? Great. How well can you do it? Oh, you didn't do it so good. Sorry, you don't pass. All right? You need to have both. You need to know the answer, and you need to have a degree of polish. Which brings me to titles, quickly, on a little segue. If you look at what titles are used in martial art, in particular in karate, and you come across titles like Renshi. Renshi means a polished example. So when you look at Renshi, this title that people are walking around with, bandering around, it means that it is a polished example. Hanshi or Shihan, just swap the word around, basically mean the same thing, just slightly different implications because you've swapped it around. And that's like exemplary master type example. Okay, and that's why sometimes people call themselves Hanshi, or not Hanshi, Shihan, and they say, where's master? No longer teacher, but now master. Okay, and then there's obviously Kyoshi, which is kind of the teacher's example. So in the olden days, you would get a textbook that would be the textbook for the learners, and then you get a textbook that was for the teacher to work from to help the teacher understand what they were teaching to the learners. That's what Kyoshi is. It's that textbook, that person who can help teachers become better teachers. That's Kyoshi. All right. As far as I'm concerned, those titles are archaic. Today we have a numerical system, 1 to 10, and you're systematically climbing up the numerical system. If your school gives an honorific of a title, cool, lekker. If you're asked money for it, not lekker. All right, lekker is a South African word that means nice, cool, great. All right. By the time you get to black belt, you need to be able to do all the bunkai for all the grading kata. So in Goju Ryu, typically in our dojo, maybe not in every dojo in the world, you would do bunkai for Geksare Ich, Geksare Ni, Saifa, Seiyunshin, and our shodan grading kata is Sisoshin. Now, yes, now I know there's some of you jumping up and down and going, whoa, 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 Sisoshin kata is like a 4th or a 5th dan kata. How dare you? No, that's the way we've done it in South Africa since I was a child. So in the 1980s, we were doing it that way, and we have never, ever done it the other way. Except for 2 years when I was in the Seiwakai, part of the JKF Gojukai, and then suddenly Sisoshin was the 4th dan kata. And it was like, whoa, so that means I should be a 4th dan? I can do Sisoshin already. I was only a shodan. Okay? But generally speaking, you do what the school says or what your sensei says, and you just fit in accordingly. But you'd have to do all those katas bunkai. When we do our grading, we test it during the course of the grueling 2 days of testing. Yes, 2 days of testing. And at the end of those 2 days, we have like the seniors come in and they sit at the table, and students come up and they demonstrate. They demonstrate the kata, the breathing kata. They demonstrate their grading kata. They then choose a togoi kata, their favorite kata that they do. They go through. During the course of the 2 days, they would have done all the kata. They would have done all the basics. They would have done all the bunkai. They would have done kehon ippon. And they will also do fighting or sparring. A grading without fighting or sparring is not complete, by the way. There has to be some kind of sparring in your grading, whether it is you fighting against 6 or 7 people holding big sponges that are pushing you and shoving you around and you have to endure the milling process, or whether you put gloves on and footers on and a head guard and mouth shield and you actually spar and you do proper sparring. Grading is not complete without some degree of sparring. Okay, it's something that sometimes can be a double-edged sword. I suspect when I go to Okinawa to attempt 6th dan grading, there will be little to no sparring. In fact, the kumite is often kehon ippon or bunkai, where you have to show 5 applications to show the depth of your knowledge in 5 applications without overcomplicating it. And that's the hard part, because people want to get really complicated. Somewhere along the line, you have to train Randori. Randori for a Goju practitioner is a lot closer. The blocking techniques are a lot simpler. The counters are simpler. You don't seem to find that there's a lot of grabbing onto punching techniques because they have a recoil. So we often have this basic rule in our Randori. You cannot grab simply because the other person is going slow. So if a person kicks slowly and controlled, you can't grab their leg and then lift it up and then try to sweep them. Because if that person had to kick at full speed, chances are you weren't going to catch their leg that easily. You might just block it and have to retaliate. And so this is the first step in building better Randori and becoming a better black belt and having a sparring component that actually makes sense and that is tethered to the art. And that way you also have the control You might put on gloves. I don't like wearing gloves when I spar, footers and shins. Don't like those either. I do think a gum guard or gum shield, mouth shield is super important, just because I know what dentistry costs. I've spent a fortune on my teeth, because when you lose your teeth, you can't eat, and when you can't eat, you go mad. All right? And so I would suggest that, generally speaking, Randori, slow, extremely controlled, and a gum shield, mouth shield, in case there's an accident. When you want to escalate it up, then bring out the gloves, bring out the shins, bring out the body pads, and set up 3-minute rounds and have like old-fashioned, really beat-down karate, where you try and beat the crap out of each other. And it's got its place, it has merits. And then the other thing is to grapple, to wrestle. Okay, I know there are a lot of Goju people out there who are going, no, sensei. Shay, you cannot be on the ground. The ground's the last place you want to be on. The ground is a great place to work from, because when you fall, you only fall this far. When you're standing up and you've got to fall, maybe you're not as fortunate to have tatami in your dojo. Maybe you're training in a church hall and it's tiled floor. Then all of a sudden it's going to be a lot harder to fall from up here onto that ground. So your environment, your dojo environment, does influence the quality and the type of karate that you can learn and the extent of the art that you can explore. The other thing to consider, I know there's old sensei down in the bottom of Johannesburg, Sensei Arnold de Beer, always spoke about doing Kobudo. He was very, very serious about that. And then I have another sensei, my two senior senseis, one of them being Sensei Yanni. He's a very serious Kobudo sensei here in South Africa. And then our headquarters senseis, Ilyas and Lilian Katan sensei, also do Kobudo. And that is like the proverbial lost child of martial art in Okinawa, because it's become disjointed. It's become its own little family. But it once upon a time was part of every karate setup. You did karate, and it wasn't karate. You did a martial art that included some kind of weaponry. Miyagi-sensei did weaponry. Okay? In fact, Sensei Terio Chinnen's introduction was through his uncle, who happens to be like one of the pinnacle last members of Yamani Chinnenry. Some kind of grappling. Nearly everybody in Okinawa takes part in classical sumo type Okinawan sumo competitions. There was a very strong culture of this. And so there was some kind of grappling and some kind of wrestling. And then some kind of Hojo Undo, weight training, that was developed in the 1920s. So this is the sort of build-up that you need. You copy what sensei says. When you leave the dojo and you go and you train on your own, and you've polished it quite a lot, then you start to break it up so you can understand it. And then you repackage it for yourself so that you have a better understanding and a better ability to utilize it. Do not get caught in copy, copy, copy. It is not shu, shu, shu. It is shu, ha, ri. Copy, break, reassemble. Please do not forget this. If you can get this right, your martial art, your karate, your whatever type of karate you're doing, your Goju Ryu will start to blossom. And then look for the things that have been sidelined. All right, and it might be simply the environment you're in. You might not wrestle because there's no mats. Find a place where you can wrestle. Might not have capacity to do weapons. Maybe weapons are illegal in your country. Maybe you've got to find a way around how you train weaponry without weapons. Consider what it would be like to train without a weapon. I know in the United Kingdom right now there is a lot of stuff being written down in their legal system about weapons, and a lot of martial arts systems are literally going, we don't know what to do, because the weaponry has been all banned. If you're caught with the weapons, you go to jail. All right, so there are circumstances where this might affect you. So that's it. I think let's take a bow. Let's take a bow, Brian. Arigato gozaimasu. Arigato gozaimasu. Hopefully you find this is a useful video. If you go back and you want to know anything about specific bunkai or specific katas, don't forget we have a whole bunch of videos that are already kind of categorized on playlists based on the bell system that we use in our dojo. Remember, do what your sensei says and keep training. Arigatou gozaimasu. Sayonara. Don't forget, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We're out of here.